You are applying for cybersecurity roles, you are sending resumes, you are checking your inbox, and nothing is happening. There's no interviews, no recruiter calls, sometimes not even a proper rejection email. Now, when that happens, most people assume one of two things. Either the market is broken or, quite simply, they're not good enough. Now, sometimes the market is hard. Right now, we're in a difficult market. But sometimes you do need more experience. But very often, there is a simpler problem, and that's your resume is not making the case quickly enough. And in cybersecurity, that matters because recruiters and hiring managers are not giving every resume 5 minutes of thoughtful attention. They're scanning, they're filtering, they're looking for evidence. And if the right evidence is not obvious, so you can be a decent candidate, but you could still be skipped. Today, I'm going to walk you through the biggest cybersecurity resume mistakes I see from the recruiter side of the table. We'll talk about how resumes actually get screened and what I would fix before you send another application. This is Cyber Careers with Luke Gough. I am Luke Gough, a working cybersecurity recruiter and career coach, and this is the show where I answer the career questions candidates ask me most from the recruiter side of the table. And today we're talking about resumes, but more specifically, why your cyber resume might not be getting callbacks and what to do about it. So first of all, let's talk about why this matters, because before we get into mistakes, I want to be clear about something. Your resume does not need to be perfect. It does not need fancy formatting. It does not need to tell your entire life story. It does not even need to make you look like a senior security engineer if you're not one. Its job is much simpler. The job of your resume is to get you to the next conversation. That's it. Don't overcomplicate it. Your resume is designed to get you in front of someone to have that discussion. Once you have an interview, to a certain degree, your resume gets put aside because you are there to discuss what you've done, how you could add value to the company, your background, etc. Now, a phone screen, a recruiter call, a hiring manager interview, the resume is not the final decision. It is the bridge to the next step, and it's important you understand that. The problem is that most resumes are written like career histories. They list everything the person has ever done, but they do not clearly answer the question the recruiter is asking. And that question is this person relevant for this specific role? Now, if the answer is not clear quickly, the resume gets passed over very quickly. How resumes actually get screened. So most candidates imagine a recruiter slowly reading their resume line by line with a coffee in hand. And that, quite frankly, that is not how it works most of the time. And here is what usually happens. First, the application goes into an applicant tracking system, also known as an ATS. Now, depending on the employer and process, the system may pass the resume, extract sections, and help the recruitment team search or filter by keywords, skills, location, experience, and other criteria. Now, I want to be careful here because people talk about ATS systems as if every resume is automatically rejected by a robot. Now, that's not true. That is too simplistic. But ATS passing still matters because if your resume is hard to read or, let's say, badly formatted or missing relevant language from the job ad, you're making the process harder for yourself. Then comes a human scan. Now, a recruiter or talent person is often reviewing dozens, even hundreds of applications depending on the market. On the first pass, they are not studying every line. They are looking for signals. They just simply don't have time to read the whole CV from front to back. So what role is this person targeting? Do they have relevant experience? Do they have the certifications or tools that the job ad is specifically asking for? Are they in the right location or even time zone? Is there evidence they can do the work? Is the resume easy to understand? These are the things they're looking for. So that first scan can be very quick. Even 7 to 10 seconds is a useful way to think about it. You may have even heard, it's out there where they say recruiters spend 6 seconds on average looking at the resume. Now, I know that doesn't sound a lot and it might sound a little bit harsh, but honestly, 7 to 10 seconds is a lot of the time what happens because there's so many resumes to look through. So they're looking for keywords quickly. Now, if the resume passes that first scan, then it gets a more careful read. That's when people will go through it in more detail. That is where the recruiter checks projects, bullet points, tools, scope, outcomes, LinkedIn, GitHub portfolios, and whether the story makes sense. So the question for your resume is not, have I included everything? The better question is, can a recruiter understand my relevance quickly? So let's talk about some mistakes I see now. Mistake number 1, a generic professional summary. Now, the first mistake is having a professional summary that's very generic. It misses the point. You've probably seen this before, highly motivated cybersecurity professional seeking a challenging role where I can leverage my skills and contribute to a dynamic organization. Now, yeah, admittedly, that sentence sounds professional, but it almost says nothing. It does not tell me what role you want. It doesn't tell me what your background is. It doesn't even tell me what evidence you have. So why should I keep reading? The fix is to make the summary specific. Use the formula, target role, relevant background, 2 top strengths, 1 proof point. Let's give you an example. Entry-level SOC analyst candidate with CompTIA Security Plus and hands-on experience building a home SIEM lab using Splunk. Background in IT support with practical exposure to user access, ticket handling, endpoint troubleshooting, and security awareness. You probably agree that is so much stronger. Now, as a recruiter, I now know the target role, I know the certification, I know there is practical evidence. I know the previous background connects to the role. So if you're moving from a non-technical background, the same principle applies. Let's give you another example. Career changer targeting junior GRC analyst roles with experience in operations, documentation, and stakeholder management. Currently building cybersecurity foundations through Security Plus study, Essential 8 research, and sample risk register projects. Again, it's not pretending, it's actually positioning yourself. Your summary should make the recruiter think, okay, I understand what this person is aiming for. One thing I always tell my clients is your professional summary should be almost an example of why you're applying for the role, where the recruiter doesn't need to almost read the rest of your CV. Now, obviously they will go on and read more of it, but that professional summary should be to the point, and it should be like, yes, this candidate knows the role they're applying for. This candidate knows what they need to do and if they're right for it. I'm going to read on and see what else they say. Okay, mistake number 2, no clear target role. So the second mistake is closely related, no clear target role. So a lot of resumes say something like seeking a role in cybersecurity. Now, that might be the case and that might be true, absolutely, but it's too broad. Cybersecurity is not one job. SOC, GRC, IAM, cloud security, application security, pen testing. There are so many different pathways. A resume that tries to appeal to all of them usually appeals strongly to none of them. If you're applying for a SOC analyst role, your resume should feel like a SOC analyst resume. That means logs, alerts, networking, SIEM, incident response, detection, etc. If you're applying for GRC, the resume should feel different. That means risk controls, frameworks, documentation, stakeholders, ISO 27001, NIST, all of these things need to be in there. And if you're applying for an IAM, again, different evidence, user lifecycle, access reviews, least privilege, MFA, etc., Entra ID. This is why one generic cyber resume does not work well. You can have a master resume in the background, but every application needs a version shaped towards the role. So I advise people have one resume that you've done, a master one that's formatted lovely, that looks professional, is written well, and then tailor each master resume particularly and specifically for the role that you're applying for. Okay, mistake 3, listing responsibilities instead of evidence. So the third mistake is listing responsibilities instead of actually evidence of what you've done. Now, a responsibility tells me what the job was supposed to involve. Evidence tells me what you actually did. For example, do not write responsible for monitoring security alerts. Write something more specific. So reviewed and triaged endpoint security alerts, or escalated confirmed issues to senior analysts and documented recurring false positives for tuning discussions. Even if you don't have cyber work experience, you can still use this principle. So once again, do not write completed try-hack me rooms. Rather write completed a structured SOC learning pathway covering Linux basics, network traffic analysis and log review. Documented key lessons in 3 short write-ups linked in portfolio. Another example, don't write built a home lab. Great, you've built a home lab, but what? Rather write built a small home lab with Windows and Linux virtual machines to practice user permissions. basic login and security tool setup. I then documented setup steps, screenshots, and lessons learned. The point is not to exaggerate, the point is to be concrete. Recruiters can work with concrete evidence, but they can't do much with vague claims. Okay, mistake 4. No projects or practical proof. This is a big one for entry-level candidates and career changers. If you have no cybersecurity work experience, your projects need to carry more weight. They are not a nice extra, they are part of your evidence. I'm always talking about this. The recruiter is asking, why should I believe this person can do the job? A certification helps answer part of that question, but not all of it. Now, a good project section can include a SOC lab, a SIEM setup, a phishing analysis write-up, a GRC risk register, a sample security policy. The mistake is either having no project section or listing projects with no detail. A weak project line says, home lab using Splunk. A better version says, built a basic Splunk home lab to ingest Windows event logs and investigate failed login patterns. Created a short write-up explaining the setup, sample events reviewed, and what the findings would mean in a SOC context. That gives me something to understand. It also gives me something to ask about in an interview. That is what you want. Mistake 5, bad keyword strategy. There are 2 ways candidates get this wrong. Some ignore the job description completely. Their resume uses different language from the job ad, so the relevance is not obvious. And others go the other way and stuff the resume with every cybersecurity keyword they can think of, and neither is good. The fix is simple. Use the job ad as a guide. Read the ad and identify the 8 to 12 most important skills, tools, and responsibilities. So if the job mentions SIEM incident response, phishing analysis, Microsoft Sentinel, Defender, Windows, Linux, and ticketing, and you have relevant exposure, those words should appear naturally in your resume, not in a huge keyword dump. Remember, you have the job ad there, the description telling you what they're looking for. So use that correctly. In your summary, in your skills section, in your project descriptions, in your work bullets where relevant, the goal is not to trick the system, but the goal is to make relevance obvious. So if the job is asking for GRC and your resume only talks about technical labs, you may look misaligned even if you are capable. If the job is asking for SOC and your resume hides your SIEM project at the bottom, you are making the recruiter work too hard. Use the employer's language where it is honest to do so. Okay, mistake 6, poor formatting. I know this sounds boring, but it really matters. Cyber resume should be easy to scan and easy to pass. Use one column, use standard headings, use a normal font, and keep the structure predictable. Don't have graphs or fancy fonts and colors. You don't need them. It should be summary, skills, certifications, projects, experience, education, links. That is enough. You don't need those graphics. You do not need progress bars. You don't need 2 columns. You do not need icons next to every section. And you definitely don't need a photo. A beautiful resume that is hard to pass is worse than a boring resume that clearly shows relevant evidence. Remember, the hiring managers aren't looking at how good you are using Canva and how nice you can make your CV look. That's not what they want. They want to see, can you do the job you're applying for? Make it easy for them. Okay, mistake 7. Send in the same resume every time. This is probably one of the highest leverage fixes. Most people send the same resume to 50 jobs and wonder why they hear back from 1 or 2, sometimes nothing. Tailoring does not mean rewriting the entire document every time. It means adjusting the summary. It means reordering skills or choosing the most relevant projects and matching the language of the job ad where truthful. And that's important because obviously you can't lie. But you can make sure that if the job ad asks you for something you've done, you make sure it's very easy to read in your CV. For a SOC role, bring SOC evidence higher. For a GRC role, bring governance, risk, documentation, and stakeholder evidence higher. For IAM, bring access, identity, and permissions evidence higher. Don't make someone look to the bottom of your resume to try and find those words. That might take 10 to 15 minutes per application, but it's not a waste of time. That is the work you need to be doing. A tailored resume sent to 10 realistic roles will often outperform a generic resume sent to 100. Mistake 8, weak links and no verification. Now, I know I said 7 mistakes, but I would add one more because it's becoming more important. No links. If you have a LinkedIn profile, customize the URL and include it. If you have a GitHub, include it. If you have a portfolio, include it. You get the picture. Make it easier for the recruiter or hiring manager to verify what you've done. But only link things that are ready to be seen. A half-empty GitHub with random files and no README can hurt you. So it's important to remember that. A simple, clear portfolio with 2 properly documented projects can really help you stand out. Now, the standard is not perfection, but the standard is clarity. So let's talk about a quick resume audit. Before you send your next application, I want you to run this quick audit. Can someone tell your target role in the first 10 seconds? Does your summary say something specific? Have you included relevant certifications without making the resume only about certifications? Do you have project section if you lack cyber work experience? Do your bullet points show evidence, not just responsibilities? Does the language match the job ad naturally? Is the format simple enough for a recruiter and ATS to read? Have you included LinkedIn, GitHub, or portfolio links where relevant? Have you tailored the resume to this role? If the answer to any of those is no, fix it before applying. Please do that. If you're sitting there thinking, I'm bored of doing this, I've had enough, I'm just going to send it, don't. Spend that extra 5-10 minutes. Okay, now at the end of this, I want to talk about some Q&As. So I want to answer a few quick questions that I get all the time. This hopefully will help you. And remember, please do send in your questions. If you have any that you want covered, either specific questions or a broad topic, fill out the form that I leave in the show notes. I look at every single one and I'll try and add them in. Question 1, should my cyber resume be 1 page or 2? I get this question a lot. For most early career candidates, 1 page is usually enough. If you have relevant IT, security, military, engineering, even risk experience, then 2 pages can be fine, but don't go more than that. The issue is not the page count necessarily by itself. The issue is whether every line earns its place. But if you do go more than 2 pages, why? If you're a career changer, something you've done 25 years ago probably isn't relevant now. You don't need to add lots of bullet points to that. Really focus on keeping it down to 1 page or 2 max. Question 2, should I include non-cyber experience? Absolutely, yes, if it helps the story. So customer service, operations, risk compliance, support, teaching, finance, management, and stakeholder management as well. All of this work can matter, but translate it. Don't just list old duties, show the transferable value. Now, if the work has absolutely no relevance whatsoever, put it down, put the date you worked because you need to do that, but you don't need to list all your responsibilities. It takes up space on the paper, to be honest. Question 3, should I use a resume designer or template? Use a simple template if it keeps you organized. Now, guys, I've got anyone listening to this on my YouTube channel, there are videos I've done that shows resumes, and also in my Job Ready Cyber Blueprint I've done, there are resume templates available there, so you can use them. But avoid anything over-designed. 1 column, clear headings, plain formatting. Recruiters, remember, we don't need a poster, we need a readable document. Question 4, what if I have no projects yet? Then pause and build one. If you're applying for a cyber role with no cyber experience, no projects, and no practical experience, you're making the job search much harder than it needs to be. If you've just got your Security Plus, great start, absolutely great start, but you need to back that up with projects. Stop right now and build one. So if your resume is not getting callbacks, don't just send one more application with the same document. Fix the signal first. Make the target role obvious, make the evidence clear, make the projects visible, and match the job ad honestly. Keep the format simple. Give the recruiter or hiring manager a reason to keep reading. That is what changes the response rate. So if you want a step-by-step walkthrough with examples, templates, and before and after resume fixes, that is exactly why I built my Cyber Job Ready Blueprint. The link will be in the show notes. I really recommend you check that out. And once again, if you have a question you want me to answer on a future Cyber Careers episode, you can send that through in the form in the show notes as well. I really want to thank you all for listening. I really do hope you found this useful. Follow the show so the next episode lands automatically. As always, keep leveling up your career. I'll see you next time.